Yes, and here we signed the Baltic as well. We sign all important papers here.
Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear members of media. Welcome to the press conference following the meeting between the Latvian, Lithuanian, Polish and Estonian foreign ministers. Working languages are Latvian and English, and simultaneous interpretation will be provided. We are live streamed on the webpage of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and our Ministry's social media accounts. We'll start with the statement of Mr. Rinkevich, Foreign Minister of Latvia. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. We indeed just concluded a meeting with Estonian, Lithuanian and Polish colleagues, and as you saw, we just signed a joint declaration enhancing the cooperation amongst our four countries, given the current security situation and our shared interests with regard to strengthening of the security of our nations, as well as our immense support to Ukraine that we are going to continue. We also attach great potential to cooperation in the energy, transport, cyber security and other sectors, and also regarding our common border with Belarus and Russia that we need to physically secure and also politically and legally secure. This declaration will provide for a more structured cooperation and enhanced, deeper cooperation between our countries at the level of the foreign ministers, but potentially it could be also expanded or broadened to include other line ministries as well, also including the governments of our countries. And today, of course, we use the opportunity to also discuss a number of practical issues. First, our countries are probably, if you look at various facts and data and surveys, that have been the biggest or the greatest supporters of Ukraine in terms of the share of GDP for the military assistance, humanitarian assistance, and also asylum seekers, refugee assistance, and we are fully committed and dedicated to continued support to Ukraine, and we are ready to share this burden together with other allies. We think that Ukraine needs to be provided right now everything it needs, not only to defend itself, but also liberate some of the occupied territories and eventually be victorious. And we will therefore continue to support Ukraine on all kinds of levels, advocate for all kinds of support to Ukraine, both from our countries, Europe, and also from international organizations. And we hope that our cooperation in this regard will be deeper, more structured, and more enhanced. And we undoubtedly also agreed to cooperate much closely in the framework of NATO and the EU. We, of course, also talked about the forthcoming NATO summit in Vilnius, which will be a crucial summit. We think that at least two big, I would say, breakthroughs will be achieved during this summit. First of all, full membership of Sweden and Finland in NATO, and we fully support, we fully back the membership of both countries in NATO and the ratification of their membership or accession applications as soon as possible. And secondly, we would like to see NATO and Ukraine bring relations to new level in terms of depth and breadth, and that is something that we are going to work towards. Then we also discussed, for example, the recent IOC decision, International Olympic Committee decision, to allow Russian and Belarusian athletes compete in Paris Olympics under a neutral flag. We all agreed that as long as Russia, supported by Belarus, is continuing unprovoked direct aggression against Ukraine, such a step should not be supported, is unacceptable. However, decisions regarding participation are the remit of our national Olympic committees, so our colleagues that are responsible for sports should address this, but we will nevertheless urge and encourage our sporting organizations and our colleagues that are responsible for the sports policies to coordinate and cooperate and urge international community to be united on this. But this is, however, not the responsibility of the government institutions or departments. It's the responsibility of sporting organizations. However, our stance regarding the announcement of the IOC management is very straightforward and very firm. I'd like to put stop here and give the floor to our colleagues. The floor is given to the Polish foreign ministers, please. Foreign Minister, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin in the most traditional way by expressing my gratitude to our host, Minister Edgars Rinkiewicz, for not only bringing us together and our associates who prepared the declaration we have just signed, but also who arranged this event that is bringing closer and closer our four countries. I would like to draw your attention to the background of this initiative. Since the February of last year, the foreign policy of each and every European country has been conducted in the shadow of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Our four countries, as we stated in our joint declaration, shared common experience coming from the past of being victims of imperial and totalitarian politics of our neighbors. And this shared experience gives us a very strong sense of responsibility and solidarity vis-à-vis the current formula of Russian imperialism. In 2008, the leaders of our four countries, accompanied by the President of Ukraine, went to Tbilisi to protest against the Russian invasion of that country. They stand caused that the Russian troops, the Russian tanks did not enter Tbilisi. They stopped 30 kilometers north of the city. And the late President of Poland, Professor Lech Kaczyński, said at that time something that we in Poland recall very well. He said, "Today Georgia, tomorrow Ukraine, the day after tomorrow the Baltic states, and later perhaps my country, Poland." If we refer to his reading of the Russian imperial roadmap, we have to realize that we are now in the middle of the road. And this causes us to join forces and to act in the same way the leaders of our countries acted in Tbilisi in the summer of 2008. We have realized, just looking back at the last year that it is our countries, our 4 countries, that provide most weapons, equipment, and ammunition to Ukraine if we count our efforts per capita. And as you know, we are still not the richest countries in Europe. Our philosophy is to aid Ukraine as much as possible and as soon as possible. We all do exactly that. So, as far as the support for Ukraine is concerned, we are acting in the same way, without even consulting our thoughts and deeds. Moreover, whenever we have a chance to make a public statement as diplomats, whether in the European Union, whether above all among our allies in NATO, or also in the United Nations, we draw attention to the Russian threat. We draw attention to the threat that Russia is posing to the countries of eastern flank of the NATO alliance. And we are all very much speaking in one voice when it comes to existential issues for all of us, which is the strengthening of the eastern flank of the NATO alliance. Moreover, it's easy to realize that we also speak in one voice when it comes to restrictive measures imposed on Russia by the European Union, or more broadly by the transatlantic community, or even the free world as a whole. And this is our strong conviction and also our experience that when we join forces, when we join our diplomatic efforts, we are better heard, we seem to be more convincing, and we are in a position to deliver more persuasive arguments. And this is the background on our joint initiative. And as Minister Rinkiewicz indicated, this is the formula open to other ministers of our countries and also to other public authorities of, as we call it, Poland and 3 Baltic countries. And I'm really absolutely convinced that given our very close, very friendly, I don't hesitate to say cordial cooperation, the best of our work together is still certainly ahead of us. Thank you.
Paldies, Polijas ārlietu ministram. Vārds ir.
I would like to thank the Polish Prime Minister and give the floor to the Estonian Foreign Minister.
Colleagues, dear friends, Well, let me reiterate the words of Zbigniew of gratitude of Edgar's to arranging and hosting that event. The outcome of Russian-Ukrainian war is not a political issue for our countries. It is an existential issue. And therefore, our today's statement that we are going together establish a platform of enhanced cooperation is a must in sake of our freedom, in sake of our security, in sake of freedom and victory of Ukraine. First element of our cooperation surely is how to continue a practical deliverables support to Ukraine. There is one element we have done. We are continuing to do support on our own. But our call is to all Western community countries, we need to act in a speedier manner. Ukraine needs fighters, Ukraine needs long-range missiles, Ukraine needs that tanks will be, with the proper propulsion, arrive with the smoothest time frame. We need to act. Secondly, continuing isolation of Russia. And from Estonian viewpoint, and we agreed, it is very important that in future steps towards new packages of sanctions, there should be no place to derogations or loopholes to the current sanctions system. We say clearly, vocally no to these any initiatives. Also, there is on the table a proposal of creating additional Russian oil products caps, and we have called for a review of Russian crude oil price cap. And this is an issue we are going most intensively to discuss with all other European countries and with European Commission. The heart of beast is indeed, economy is its raw materials business, and we have not harmed it enough. We have to continue. And also, let me reiterate Edgar's when he said remarks on recent news that the Russian Belarus sportsmen could have an opportunity to attend in Olympics qualifications, in Olympics. I think it is an issue of cowardice when it is said that, okay, sports and politics are like in divide, they're separate channels in that case. Well, humans do sport, and humans are now suffering. This is not a case of politics or solely academic case of sports. This is a case of humanity, who we are. And indeed, by the strongest words, I condemn these decisions which would allow, and let us put it clear perspective, this is an intent of Russia to delegitimize itself, return of Russian and Belarus sportsmen to these festives. And we need to cooperate. We discussed also that our Olympic committees, our responsible authorities need to cooperate also between ourselves in that matter. And we discussed also a list of practical issues of cooperation. One element I will put to state is importance, as we are neighboring countries of aggressor state, its proxy. It's very important also to deepen the cooperation on border control and border security, because people are moving and we need to be aware what happens in our borders. We need to secure, and surely because we are forming together a region, it is important also to share information and create also a joint measures to tackle any threats which can appear to rise from the side of aggressor state. So I think today was a very significant moment of cooperation. We discussed also that we are going to appoint possibly coordinators to prepare also any other elements of our platform to continue. Thank you.
Paldies, vārds Lietuvas.
Thank you. Now the floor is given to the Foreign Minister of Lithuania.
It's a great honor and pleasure being here today in Riga, and I'm particularly happy that what started as a chance to converse and exchange ideas about the security situation in our region is becoming a more formalized place of conversation. To me, honestly, there's not much that I can add to what was already said. I'm particularly grateful to Minister Rau, who explained the historical path towards where we are currently, starting from 2008, and I could say that we've always shared a very sober attitude towards the threats coming from the East and the assistance needed to our friends in Eastern Partnership countries and elsewhere. What is clear to me now, that out of this enhanced cooperation environment that we are creating is a new security architecture for the European continent is being born. Because if not here, then where else the future of European security will be formalized, if not in the Baltics, if not on the eastern flank, if not on Ukraine. After the war is won in Ukraine, we will definitely have to decide how we are going to defend Ukraine, how we are going to assist Ukraine defending itself, how we are going to make sure that what happened last year, February 24th, will not repeat again. And therefore, I think that it's very good that we convene, have a chance to discuss, not only on the practical points that my colleagues touched upon, but also on the path to the future. How we'll make sure that, that our region is safer and more defendable from what we're seeing in Ukraine. As a representative from Lithuanian government, I had a chance to present to my colleagues the upcoming Vilnius summit and answer the questions that will be discussed this summer in Vilnius, update the colleagues on where we are, because it is very clear and understandable that most of the questions discussed in NATO summit will very much be close to all of us four, not just politically, but also geographically. We will be talking about the further defense of eastern flank. We will be discussing further assistance to Ukraine. We'll be discussing NATO enlargement. All of these questions are very much related to our region. Therefore, I'm very grateful for the chance that we had a possibility to touch upon that. And finally, from my side, I think that what was very important that we had the chance to converse was the sanctions. It's one of the answers that we have as members of the European Union towards the war, Russia's war in Ukraine. And I think that we all agree, and when talking about additional sanctions, yes, definitely we need to move forward, but moving forward cannot mean that we're opening new loopholes with new derogations. So I'm very glad that we stand firmly on this topic, and hopefully we can find an agreement among the 27 in European Union when we'll discuss further packages already recently. Thank you, dear colleague.
Paldies, ministru kungiem, laiks.
Thank you to ministers, and now the time for questions from the media. Please present yourself and
represent the global Spanish language news agency, EFI. And my question is to Minister Rau. How far along are these possible talks to deliver fighter aircraft to Ukraine, and also to deliver some of your stock of tanks to Ukraine? talking about leopard tanks now.
Well, whatever we, as the Polish state, deliver to our Ukrainian neighbors is being done in the coordination and, of course, the agreement with our NATO allies. And that's the policy of my government, not to talk about details concerning such sensitive issues as the amount and the quality and quantity of the weapons, equipment, and other issues like ammunition. But nevertheless, we are happy that we can help the Ukrainians to defend themselves following the provisions, above all, of the UN Charter. Ukraine is defending its national independence, state sovereignty, and territorial integrity. And the rest, if you want to ask me about the details, is commonly known. We are now busy organizing the deliveries of the battle tanks, as we announced our intention some weeks ago, and the issue of aircraft is being discussed, as you know, with our allies.
Paul.
Thank you. The answer has been provided. Any other questions? Mr. Arns Eglitz from Bloomberg News.
As to the Estonian minister, you mentioned the oil price cap. Is there a price that you would agree to that is lower than, or that you're pushing for that's lower than the current one? And do you see an agreement on also diesel fuel?
Well, we have made our joint statement in Coreper. There is discussions right now going on. And well, our intent is clear, that we would like to have it lower. And surely all the member states have to agree on that basis. Commission is an arbiter in that case, and also G7 has to accept it. But what is important that the context is, we agreed, and we were rather vocal in last December, that this oil price cap should be reviewed on the basis of 2 months, which is now the moment, with the intent to lower it 5% from the Russian crude oil market price. And this is something we stick and call as to pass the review, and also surely we are, well, from Estonian point, we are welcoming creation of additional oil caps, but now the discussions is going on what price level would be proper to harm Russian raw products industry most. Thank you.
Jā, lūdzu, jautājums.
Yes, we have another question from the middle of the room.
Radio Free Liberty TV program, Current Time Baltics. I have a question for the all ministers. How do you see a future of diplomatic relations with the Russian Federation in the foreseeable space, in the near future? Thank you.
Yes. Let's start on that.
Well, a month ago, Lithuania was, I think, the only country in the European Union without the ambassador in Moscow and without Russian ambassador in Vilnius. We took the decision to lower our diplomatic relations to charge d'affaires level after the massacre in Bucha was revealed. Now, in the group of the Baltic countries. And most probably, I would not exclude the possibility that more countries can be convinced that this is a way to go when they see what is happening in Ukraine or additional arguments emerge. It takes time. There are different arguments, I believe, but I think that in many cases, there's little use, honestly, of having an ambassador, a Russian ambassador in any of European capitals. Because, as we have seen, I don't know, often case it is that, I say in most cases, it's no longer a diplomatic institution. It's an institution of propaganda, covering up the crimes of war, and in general promoting what is unfortunately genocidal agenda of Russian regime.
Well, if you are asking about the future of our diplomatic relations with Russia, I must say that these relations, quite frankly, are being frozen right now. Under present conditions, I don't expect much change in them. Unfortunately, I have to agree with my good friend Gabrielus that very often Russian diplomats and all other members of the Russian Foreign Service turn to the activities that have nothing to do with diplomacy. So, to be very open with you, as long as Russia is being involved in its aggression against Ukraine, as long as Russia is an aggressor trying to deprive the victim of its aggression, Ukraine, of its right to be free, sovereign, to choose the alliance to which it wants to belong. Nothing indicates that our mutual bilateral relations with Russia will change. If Russia withdraws from Ukraine, if Russia is ready to pay the reparations for the damage inflicted to Ukraine, when Russia is ready to deliver to the international courts of justice those who are responsible for the war atrocities, if all that happens, Poland will be more than ready to radically improve our relations, not only diplomatic relations with Russia, but if this is not going to happen, nothing will change in our present bilateral relations.
Well, I think that I can actually say it in one sentence. Those are going to be low energy relations as long as Russia continues its war against Ukraine.
For tomorrow, have to leave from Tallinn around 20 diplomatic staff members of Russian Federation Embassy, as Estonia established a principle of parity vis-à-vis with Russian Federation, that the same amount as Estonian diplomats is allowed as a limit to be in Tallinn, in Russian Federation Embassy. And we call other countries also to consider that. There are indeed, as Zbigniew followed, there is a vast list of events of unacceptable actions of Russian diplomats in European soils, and there is I think the amount of Russian diplomats in Europe should be also in accordance with the level, as Edgar said, low energy level of these relations. And I think Estonia has learned from the past, also the past from the painful 39, etc., that we can't imagine our security and freedom out of context, the events which are taking place as the war is in the midst of Europe. And so it will be in framing our bilateral relation perspective, and all the context of relations are dependent on the outcome of war, of accountability, of reparations, of liberation of full Ukrainian territory.
Paldies, ministrs kungi, paldies.
I would like to thank the ministers and members of the media. This concludes our press conference. Thank you all.
Today. I have worked all night.